Father God, we thank you for being here today. Thank you for the time we have to study your word. Thank you for all that you have in store for us today. We want to receive your humbling ourselves before you, Lord. Teach us, instruct us, illuminate us, Lord. In Jesus' name. Amen. 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 Okay. Actually, we don't have human accident here. On top of the other things. So, last week we opened up the second practice to which we want to devote ourselves in this particular course, and that is the practice of learning. And we emphasize learning here as learning the Bible, learning the Word of God. The Christian faith is obviously much richer than just the Bible. There's much more than that we do than simply reading the Bible. But for whatever reason, we tend to overlook the Bible. We tend to take it very lightly. We tend to focus many times our attention and our devotion to lots of other practices. They're all important. They're all centered on knowing God, discovering God, practicing that which God has called us to be. I was sharing with you that I was brought up in an Orthodox context. You know, the Orthodox Church has many, many, many beautiful faces, beautiful ways of being an Orthodox Christian in Romania. But one of the ways in which we discovered that being Orthodox was not sufficient for us, and the reason why we left the Orthodox Church and eventually became evangelicals, a background that you can still hear sometimes, an influence that you can still feel sometimes, is that we didn't really have an encounter with the Bible. The liturgy was tremendous. The mysteries that you have depicted in the liturgy were tremendous, were phenomenal ways of encountering God. But our day-to-day encounter with the Bible was just not there. And so my parents converted to the evangelical faith, and I converted later on from the evangelical faith back to a more traditional, more historical church like the Episcopal Church. I've done this during my time in London, and so it was while I was doing my PhD in London that I discovered in me a hunger for more than just the Bible itself, which is ironic. But the point is that we live our life on a continuum of things. But central to what we do is the Bible. So these 7 practices will look at many, many facets of our Christian life. But one that I want to center on, one that I want to nail down, and the one that I wanted last week to shock you a little bit with, is the importance of spending time in the Word of God, spending time in the Bible. And of course, we looked at why we should do that, and why is it that we find it difficult to do that. So why should we spend time in the Word of God, and why is it that sometimes we find it difficult? So those are the 2 big issues, underlying issues of our presentation last week. And if you remember, if you were here, remember we looked at 7 different principles. A summary of all those 7 principles will be and I boiled all of that down to 3 really essential issues. Number 1 is that reading and reflecting on the Scripture is a way to love God. It's a way of discovering God. If our job is to discover who God is and who we are in relationship with Him, if our purpose of our Christian faith is to fall in love with God, fall in love with Jesus, well, one of the most important ways you do that, the way you discover who God is you read the Word. In the Bible, it's where you find God's heart pulsating. In the Bible, it's where you discover how God thinks, how He operates, how He loves. You can't really learn that from anywhere else. There's no other place where you can really see God's pathos, His passion for His people, and then for the church, for the sinner, for the one He wants to recover and restore, than in the Bible. You just can't get that anywhere else. And so we want to love God, we want to live in the way of faith. We've got to return to the Bible. We've got to spend time in the Bible. We've got to learn God anew in the Bible. Number 2, yes, the Bible is complex. Make no mistake about it. It's complex, it's difficult. The Bible contains lots of what we call hard texts. Difficult texts to read because of the things that they describe. Think with me for a moment at the issues of violence that we encounter in the Bible. Think with me at commandments when God commands Israel, biblical Israel, to annihilate a people, to wipe them out. That's kind of tough to read. It's tough to digest. On top of everything, yes, you got lots of strange things in the Bible, like strange practices, strange names, strange ways of doing things that are just so foreign to us. So no wonder we just find it sometimes difficult to turn to the Bible. My mother, because of the things I said about violence, would never read through the book of Joshua, whereas the book that tells the conquest of Promised Land, she'll just skip over it. Because of many things in her life, she just has a very sensitive heart to anything related to violence. So she just can't watch it. She can't watch any movies that have violence, or can read anything that describes violence. It just skips over it. And I told Mom, that's the book on which I wrote my PhD. You've got to read it. Please. It's the one book to which I devoted 7 years of my life. You've got to read it. I can't. So tell me the essence of it. What is it about? So we don't want to be the kind of Christians, right? We want to read it because there's a reason why it's in there. Number 3, another aspect was reading the Bible individually and corporately. We want to start by reading the Bible for ourselves. It's me, and the Bible. I read it, I reflect on it, I draw my insights, my conclusion, my learning from it. But sometimes it's better to actually bring that to a group. Do it in a group, whether it's a family setting, whether it's a class like this, or it's a church. Do it with somebody, whether it's a coffee at Starbucks or in the park, or walk in the park and discuss what you'll learn, so you can hear what other people have learned. In the Jewish tradition, there's this beautiful phrase that says, She'im Panim HaTorah, the 70 faces of the Torah. The 70 faces of the Torah, meaning the Word of God has 70 faces. It is rich, let's put it that way. It's very rich. So what maybe you captured in your own time, you captured one facet, one face of the Word. Remember, there are 69 other ways. There are many other ways. So talk to somebody, see if you can catch another vision, another way of reading that, another way of capturing that, or something else from the text. So these are the issues that were underlying the discussion last week. For today, we want to look at 2 different things: approaches to the Bible and methods of Bible study. Approaches, the way we approach it. How should we approach the Bible? And then secondly, how do we study the Bible? There are many ways of reading and studying the Word of God. Many, many ways. Find and start with that which works for you. And I'm really dying to hear how you study the Bible. How do you read the Bible? And then begin from there, but expand. Go in different ways. Don't just get stuck like my mom with just one way and always skip over that which you don't find comfortable. Or you always read in one way the Bible. Try a different way. Try to expand the way you study the Word, so it doesn't become just a monotonous way of doing things. Number 2, interpretation. Remember that saying? Location. This is interpretation. Many of us read the Bible thinking, I want to discover the meaning. I want to find out the one solid meaning of the Bible on which everybody will agree. Good luck with that. Not just the church has struggled with that, but actually ancient Israel. When Jesus comes along, there are different parties, right? There are different religious groups. What do you think underlies their divisions? Pharisees, Sadducees. What do you think underlines it? The different ways in which they understand and apply the text, the way they were reading, the way they understood. So we sometimes think division is harmful, but division is oftentimes a product, a natural product of the way we read, the way we conceive of things. And so don't look for that one solid meeting that everybody will agree. And it's very frustrating sometimes when you sit in a group and have a group Bible study where you want to convey something to the people that you think it's so clear, it's right there. Come on, I mean, it's right there. And the people are like, okay, yeah, I see, but not quite the same way. So you get very frustrated. So past that obstacle by thinking the interpretation and Bible study is actually a journey to which we travel together to discover those multiple facets and phases of the Bible. So these are the golden rules of the way, before we even talk about how do we approach the Bible, these are the ways that we should be very mindful before we begin. So the one very handy resource that is available on each of your tables is the Book of Common Prayer. Okay? Well, did you know that the Book of Common Prayer contains an organized way of reading the Bible through 2 year, organized according to like a 2-year pattern? Did you know that? No. Some of us don't know that. So open with me on page 933. A lot of people know that. To my surprise, a lot of people don't know that. Or find it on page 933. So here is a method of covering the entire Bible in a 2-year cycle. If you have a hard time knowing where to start from here. But there are a few things we need to learn about this pattern, about this calendar. First of all, it's organized in a 2-year pattern. So on page 936, you have at the bottom says daily office year 1. On the next page, right at the bottom says daily office year 2. So remember that in 1 year you're on this side of the calendar, and the second year you begin on this side of the sun. So you don't read the same text in 2 years. So that's one thing to remember. Secondly, this calendar of reading the Bible, it's organized according to the liturgical year, which means that it doesn't start in January, as you would expect, but it starts with the first week of Advent. So you're in December, beginning a new cycle of reading the Bible. The great advantages to it. It's handy, it's right here, you probably have it at home. It's organized, and it gives you a taste every day of a variety of texts from the Bible. When you read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and you are committed to reading it that way, you will be in the Old Testament for a long time, right? Until August. And then you will be for the rest of the New Testament. You kind of forget the way the Old Testament moves, the narratives, the stories, the poems, the hymns. It's kind of a different feel. You kind of forget that. What I like about this is that in one day, it gives you a reading from the Hebrew Bible, it gives you a reading from the New Testament, from outside the Gospel, a reading from the Gospel, and then on top of everything else, you get lots of readings from Psalms.
Which are listed without the word Psalms.
That's right. So here what I have, I hope it's going to show up. Here's what I have, just a quick copy of it and an explanation for those who need it. So week 1, first week of Advent, that's where it begins. Year 1 here, year 2 here. For morning readings, if you want to organize the readings for the day according to the morning and evening prayer, then you have some of the readings for the morning, some of the readings for evening. But the first numbers you see as 146, 147, 111, 112, 113, those are the Psalms. Okay, those are the Psalms. They're not written as Psalm, but those are the Psalms for that particular day. Under that, you see Isaiah 1, 2 Peter, and Matthew 25. If I were to schedule my reading according to this time, to the recommended pattern, 2 readings in the morning, 1 in the evening, I would go Isaiah in the morning, 2 Peter in the morning, and then for the evening reading, I would go Matthew 25. So the evening readings are the last ones read, but throughout the day, I can read Psalm 146, Psalm 147 in the morning, Psalm 111, 112, 113 in the evening, or if you have time, read Psalms, some of the Psalms for the evening, for example, read them at lunch. If you have a moment at lunchtime, you can read some, you can go out for a walk, you can garden, you can do whatever, and just have a psalm or two nearby, and you can reflect on that. Now, I have to confess, this was written for, I don't know who, in 1979, had a life that allowed for all this divisions and patterns. We all know that the life can be very hectic. Different periods in your life can be very, very hectic. It's very hard to do all the readings the way they're scheduled. So this is one way of reading. If it works for you, if it keeps you on track, if it gives you structure, if you need that sort of structure, do it. It's a great way to do it. But it's not the only way to read the Bible. Another way that it's probably one of my most favorite is to read the Bible through, pick one book of the Bible and read it through. Choose one book of the Bible. Choose something from the Old Testament if you like, something from the New Testament, and read it through. Don't go from that book for a while. Stay in that book. Maybe read 1 or 2 chapters per day. If it's a short book, like the Small Prophets, for example, in the Hebrew Bible, Jonah, I think it's 4 chapters, 5 chapters. Give yourself 1 chapter per day. You'll be there in 1 week, and just get a sense of the way the book is moving. What are the real themes in that book? How does it move? What does it say? What is the structure of that book? How does it begin? How does it unfold? How does it end? How does Jonah change? How does God work with Jonah? What happens around him? These are some details that you want to sit with, and you want to develop a feel for that book. You might need a resource to do that, because sometimes just simply opening the Bible and trying to read through one book, you might be needing the assistance of a commentary or the assistance of an annotated Bible to tell you, okay, this particular book, we looked at Jonah because it was a simple example. But take something like Isaiah, Jeremiah. Isaiah has 66 chapters. It's not easy to read 66 chapters and try to develop a sense of the book. It might be helpful to have a resource like an annotated Bible that gives you some details about the book, such as who is the presumed author, where is the context in which this book was written, where is the structure of the book. Let's say 20 chapters are devoted to this thing. After that, you've got other 20 chapters devoted to this thing, 20 other chapters devoted to this other thing. So with that in your mind, you think, okay, well, the next 20 chapters are devoted to God showing Israel its faults and arguing with Israel to help Israel understand why the way they live right now is not going to lend them a great future. Okay, and then take Isaiah 1 to 20, 25, and read through that with that in mind. And then the next bit moves on to another theme. The final bit moves on to the theme of restoration. After exile, God speaks to Israel, I'm going to bring you back. Hopefully you learn something from this experience. And I'm going to restore you. And that's where you hear those passion stories, passion narratives of what the land to which God commits himself to restore his people back. So that's the thing. So it helps you to have a broad structure before you plow through 66 chapters. But it's a wonderful way to really develop and understand how the gospel, for example, moves, what are the major themes in the Gospels, or in one Gospel, or in the last, the Romans, for example, right? 15, 16 chapters. Great to know a structure as you plow through it. Yes?
Yeah, I just...
Okay, there'll be a microphone coming around.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
I guess I just wanted to kind of affirm what you just said in my experience, in that a few years ago, I found that I was just getting to know the Bible. I'd been raised in the Episcopal Church, but we were taking a journey through the Evangelical Church, and so there was a lot of focus on the Bible. And one of the things that was kind of uncomfortable for me is when I would have very fervent Christians say, you know, throw open the Bible, give me a verse, and then let's just kind of roll with that. And it really made me uncomfortable. So because I felt like you could really take a lot of things out of context, right?
Right.
So I started to study the Bible through an organisation that's a non-denominational, and we study books one at a time, which I really think is great. And at the moment I've done like John and People of the Promised Land and Romans, and then currently doing Acts. And one of the things that I think you just mentioned that I've found helpful too is to always remember when you're reading, and we studied that for a whole 9 months, like one book, which I think is really, really been beneficial for me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think has been really helpful that I've got from that experience is to remember that big story, even in all of the detail of those books. So God's power of redemption it just kind of keeps showing up all the time, and that big narrative of the Bible that keeps repeating. And to me, right there is like the joy of studying the Bible, is that all of these books, when you look at them, you can get very bogged down in the history or the detail, but when you see what God is doing in those books, it's really powerful. And the other point I thought, when you say studying it in community, last week we just were studying the book, I think it's Acts, maybe 7 or 8, and it's about Simon the sorcerer, you know, and how he is in Samaria, and he's, you know...
I think I'm going to have to stop you right there.
Okay, sorry.
But
I was just saying people have different interpretations.
It will be, because I want to give space for a few other people to talk about ways in which they study the Bible. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely comment. And I can hear the passion that you have. I think it just came out so clearly for the word, and that's tremendous. Another way to study the Bible, and then I'm going to ask you to think about, identify for us, maybe speak out loud. What is the way you study the Bible? But another way that is very useful, and perhaps springs out of that desire of spending time in one book, it's run with some words. Study just one word, and see what the entire Bible has to say about one word. Very, very fruitful exercise. For example, take the words like love, hope, faith, the land, covenant, rest, peace. What does the entire Bible have to say about one particular key word? And when you do that, you begin to develop a very, very broad and great understanding of the many, many layers that are associated with each word. You know, what rest might mean in say, the book of Genesis. It's very different than the way rest appears and is used in the book of Joshua, for example. And then it's again very different by the time you get to Hebrews, the Epistle of Hebrews. So you have very different, many layers of meaning that are building upon each other. And to be able to capture that is fantastic, to be able to see that, to see the words have not just a meaning, but multiple meanings, that they change, that they evolve. It's a phenomenal way to study the Bible. You might need for that maybe a concordance, a useful thing to have at hand. Today you can find so many different concordances, so many ways to find all the occurrences of one particular word, including online. You just Google online, and sometimes some of those things will come up, and it will give you a list of 20, 50, 100, 300 sometimes occurrences of that word. Take them down, sit with each, and try to understand by reading a little bit around the verses in which that particular word appears. What is the context here? Where is the story? What is this narrative? What is him saying, actually, using that word? So, read according to the Book of Common Prayer, 1 year, read of the entire Bible in a 2-year structure. Read it by book by book, read it word by word. How do you read the Bible? Raise your hand, we have a mic that's going around. in very short sentences. What is your favorite way of reading the Bible?
I have a question rather than the way I read the Bible.
Okay.
What you're talking about is the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Yeah.
And you look at this, and in Sunday services, we have readings from the Old and New Testament. But I always assumed that as Christians, if we were going to be short on time, we were going to spend most of our time reading things from the New Testament.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
Oh, I think that's really a topic for another course. I think that we cannot fully understand the New Testament without the Old Testament. The Old Testament is fundamental. The Old Testament it's the Bible that Jesus read. Right? It's the Bible that he read in the synagogue to the people. Right? The way he begins his ministry is by reading a portion from Isaiah. He is the servant of the Lord. God has sent me today to do this thing. This is all from Isaiah. Well, I'm glad I memorized. I memorized the rest of the PowerPoint. Okay, so we need the Old Testament. Other ways, other ways in which what is your practice? How do you read?
I grew up with a lot of conflict around this question because I had a Methodist grandmother who came over from England, and I had a congregational grandmother on the other side, and a mother who sang in the Episcopal choir. And I somewhere heard along the line, well, the Episcopalians don't use the Bible, they have the prayer book.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably not an uncommon comment around that.
Yeah.
So I still have the book, the big hardcover book of Bible stories, and I've dragged it out since
Last Sunday.
Yeah, right. I'm going to bring it and show it to you.
Fantastic. I love it.
I think
Yeah,
it was written in the 20s, and I think everybody here would recognize the pictures.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but anyway, I've been reading.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Does anyone use an app?
For reading Bible?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
reading the Bible. There's
Yeah.
a bazillion of them.
There are lots, and maybe we should make one available to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A former rector, Gary Hall,
Yes.
was doing a presentation on prayer, and he said, well, you know, I do the daily office, but I only do it, I do morning and evening all at once in the morning. And I said, oh, bingo, I'm a morning person. And God got nothing from me in the evening. But I have to say, I am with your mother, having just gone through Samuel and the Kings.
Right.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to convince you not to skip it. But go again through it. Other ways in which you read the Bible. How do you approach it?
The Bible in 1 year is an app that I listen to every morning.
And you listen to it.
I listen to it.
Uh-huh.
And then 10 or 12 years ago, I discovered two sets of books, the message of the Old Testament and the message of the New Testament, which was a pastor, Mark Deaver, who actually preached 66 consecutive weeks and summarized each book. So it's really extensive, but it's amazing. And then, in addition to that, the common language of the message by Eugene Peterson is helpful to me because he sort of speaks in a language that I understand.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Okay.
4 minutes.
4 more minutes. Okay. So let's stay with this lesson. This is going to be the final PowerPoint. Bishop Curry is really drilling in here on this particular method, and I like it. I use it, and it's found in many different Bible study today. It's called Lectio Divina. You might be familiar with. Maybe this is a new word to you. This is a method of reading the Bible that is a combination, essentially, of reading and praying and reflecting together. And I can see why he likes it, because it ties up into, for example, the next practice that's coming up, the practice of prayer. But it's also the right way to read the Bible. As we emphasized last time, we don't study because we want to get intellectually smart, right? We don't read the Bible just because we want to know here. We want to be changed by that. We want to be moved from who I am today to who I want to be tomorrow with the Word. You're in the Word, but you're beginning to converse with it, beginning to talk to this text, and the text talks back to you. And you ask questions like, God, what do you have for me to do today? What are you telling me to do today from this particular text? What do I have to change in me? What do I have to do? What are you saying to me? You're trying to listen very carefully. This has a monastic practice. The monks in various different orders have been doing this for centuries. The church has been doing this for centuries. We have been doing it in different ways. My wife calls it quiet time. Quiet time in the morning. It's essentially what it is. You spend time with the Word, but you don't just try to understand and find out how many chapters does the book of Jonah have. Right? You're trying to find out where is God sending you today? Where is your Nineveh today? Where are the places, people, situations to which you need to confront today? And to be able to understand that is to move from here to here. It's trying to listen to the text. So, I had prepared for us today, but we're not going to have time to do it, unfortunately. But I'll leave it to you as homework. Psalm 1. Psalm 1, which is actually also not just in the Bible, but it's in the Book of Common Prayer. As a way for you to do this exercise, this practice. Read the psalm. It's a well-known psalm. Blessed is the man or happy is the man who does not sit, who does not walk, who does not follow the counsel of godless men, who does not depart from the Lord, from the law of the Lord. Spend time with it and not just understand what the text says, but ask yourself, God, in what ways do you want me not to depart from the law, from your law? In what ways do you want me to stick around, to make your word part of who I am today? In what ways, going forward, I commit to reading, to hearing, to letting myself be changed, and then in an evangelical Protestant spin, to tell others about it. Tell others about it. I concluded last week that I was changed by two grandfathers. I inherited their works. Grandfather Peter, grandfather Constantine. Constantine was an academic. He wrote commentaries. This is his commentary written in the 1960s on the book of Revelation. The only one existing in Romania. Because it was only produced once, and he had it. And I inherited it. I developed my faith by listening and seeing him do this sort of thing. My other grandfather was a lowly educated factory worker, a farmer turned factory worker, who had an absolute gift and passion for storytelling, and especially Bible telling. And this is his notebook with songs, poems, meditations, reflections that he would take and go and visit different churches. And in those particular churches, you don't have to, it wasn't as formal as we are, so he just show up as a guest, announce himself that he's got something to say or a song to sing, and then he would sing the song, and then prior to singing the song, he would just give them, have you heard? And then he would begin a story from the Bible. In a way, an actor would tell you a narrative, or would retell you a story from the Bible. People would just absorb, lost into that story, and then he would conclude with a hymn or whatever he was planning to do. This is, I inherited like this, falling apart. And absolutely falling apart. I was tempted to restore it. But in restoring it, I will damage it. I don't want to improve it. Because you don't get a notebook like this, a cheap notebook like this, to look like this. By simply thinking your practice, thinking your faith. You get something like this by practicing your faith. By going out there, by picking the Bible. And he's the one in whose house there was always an open Bible. That was always sitting somewhere like this, open. in the house, in the room, in the foyer. It was always somewhere in the house. And I remember saying it. I remember seeing him studying all the time, reading it. A lowly educated, but fully passionate man about the Bible. Thank you. Have a blessed Sunday. Let's conclude with the prayer. Lord, we thank you for our time today. Beyond my words, beyond what we say here, may your Spirit help us. May your Spirit enable us to love your word, to discover your word, to dwell in your word, and in all the other things you've called us to do. In Jesus' name. Amen.